Good morning. If we could get your attention, please. It's exciting to see everyone here in St. Louis. We're here to, Gerald and I guess we'll flip to the next slide. We're learning technology as we're doing this. Gerald and myself will give you a quick presentation about DRGR analytics or MicroStrategy reports. I have a question before we really get started. How many people in this room have used first DRGR? Okay, good amount. How many people have used the MicroStrategy reports? Not as many. These reports are really, you'll see, are going to help you in your endeavors of getting to the finish line of finishing your grant. DRGR is a really active system. It's a tool. It's really a tool that you can use throughout your, trying to learn technology, throughout your process of spending the DRGR funds and helping people. We're going to get you to hopefully use the report. So that's the idea of this whole program. It will save time. It will help your performance reports. We're going to tell you how the information is put into DRGR, but it will help you overall using the report. So that's really why this session came about, because we're finding out that people aren't using the reports. And being honest, there's 105 of them. Who knows what report to use? Again, I guess I kind of went through this. We're going to do the top 10 out of the 100. So we're only going to go over 10 of the reports, which are really going to be interesting. Gerald and I work as a tag team. That's the reason why we're not standing up. If anyone's going, they're not standing up. We're going to work as a tag team here because that's what we do on the help desk. When you call the help desk, you get one of us. Why is it important to do this? Well, all the information that's gathered in the MicroStrategy reports are provided by you. From the time you start your public action plan until the point you get to your DRGR action plan. Everything is the data that you put in. These reports are really important for us. Again, it works on a system of a flow chart. So if you build a flow chart out when you do your action plan, your system will work really easy. I'm going to skip that. Okay, who uses MicroStrategy analytics reports? This is really good to know. It's the grantees. You're putting the data in. You're the control of this system. You have all the controls. You're putting the data in, and we're looking at it monthly, quarterly, as you put in. The HUD grant managers are looking at it to make sure that you're spending the funds, hopefully on time, and hopefully correctly. It gives us reports that allows us to know if something is going awry. Again, it lets you know before you right after you do it. That will help you. We don't want to get to the end of a grant and find out, oh, your LMI benefit is 1%. You were supposed to do 50. This will keep you on track. Our financial analysts are looking at it constantly to make sure the funds are being pulled from the right programs and are equal. So we know that our lock system, which is another system that pulls from our report. And the last thing is HUD leadership. Okay, who in this room knows that these reports are given to Congress? Not too many. These reports are brought up to Congress. That's the reason why we're really, really working on getting the information in DRGR correct. We need to have these reports up to date. You know, it makes a big difference if we find out that you have a $5 million grant out there. I mean, a $5 million activity, and our accomplishments say 0. You spent $5 million. They're asking the 100, then it goes down chain to us. What have they done with that 5 million? Well, you've put 0 in your QPRs. So it's really important for us to know why you must fill out the QPRs correctly and why these reports are really important. Again, the reports and the original public action plan is where you put all your information in of what you're going to accomplish in those 7, 8 years that you have the program. Some are longer than that, I know that. Your performance report, your quarterly reports. What exactly have you put in the quarterly reports? Please look at these. When we go through some of these reports, you'll find out it's really important that you've spent some funds or haven't spent any funds on a project. Give us an idea of what's happening, because there's a report for every activity that you've done. Even if you haven't done anything and you haven't closed out that activity, it opens up issues for us or issues from what is happening. And there's external data for data sources, locks, heroes that you don't have put in there. And hopefully the FEMA data will be put in there automatically soon. I don't know, has anyone ever heard of that thing? Garbage in, garbage out? This is a computer system. We really don't like the gate-go effect. We're trying to help you get to the point where we're not using this. So it really is important not to use, just put in garbage. If you make an error, everything is fixable in DRGR. You make a voucher revision, change it when you realize it. Again, if you put in that you've helped 2 people and you really helped 200, the next QPR, make that a fix. Again, the system is really, it's basically user-friendly. There are some hiccups. We're not going to say it's perfect, but it works.
Okay, so this is where I'll jump in. For those of you who know me and have done data crawls with me, I like.
Who's done data crawls with Gerald? Come on.
Yeah.
There's got to be at least 2 people in this room.
So yeah.
Okay.
How many people have fallen asleep during a data crawl? We have data crawls are fun. And like Bruce said, we have over 100 different reports. These top 10 right here, I use these in every single data crawl. But a data crawl is basically, if you've ever done a code crawl, if you're one of those people, we start at the top, work our way to the bottom, and we try and identify all kinds of issues that we can identify up front, do it on a quarterly basis when we can, and we're able to go through and keep the data clean, the whole garbage in, garbage out thing. But if you, oh, sorry, I hit the wrong button, guys.
You hit the button we're not allowed to touch.
I did.
Like I said, we just got this one first time.
Well, I'll keep talking about VBA. So if you're not a VBA person, you don't have to be, but if you're a formula person in Excel, you're absolutely going to love MicroStrategy reports because most of them come out in grid view, which means you can normalize the data pretty quickly, set it in a regular list format. And then once you do, you can save that report, right, to another folder called My Reports. How many times have you formatted a report? It takes forever and a day to get it where you want it. And then you use it again, maybe a month later, and you completely forgot how you ordered it the last time. And that's exactly the way you wanted it, but you forgot, or you can't find that Post-it note that you wrote everything down on. It's right next to your password on your monitor. So you've written down all your stuff, you forget where it's at, or you just forgot what you did. The great thing about this is once you get the reports the way you want them, save it into My Reports. And that way it's always in the format that you wanted it. That's the way I like to run mine. That way I know for a fact when I go in and run my report out of My Reports, my formulas are, or all my stuff is formatted and ready to go for my formulas in Excel when I export it. It's also ready for my VBA. And that's going to increase my efficiency. I'm not having to format all the time. And then when I pull it out, I'm able to run my VBA code, or I'm able to go through and I'm able to use a lot of formulas because I saved all my notes somewhere, and then run through. And now I can do what I really should be doing all along. And that's analyzing data and solving problems, because let's face it, formatting reports is not really what we're paid to do. We want to make sure the data is right. And best way to do that is to review, analyze the data, and solve our problems.
Okay, how to get there? Analytics, shared reports. There's a blue bar group up on top. I think everybody knows what the home button is. I call it the library building. There's some other names for it. Financials. Then we have I call it the Goonie scale. So if anyone's ever had me on a call, they know that I love using that. That's where flags are, by the way, and they are your friends. And the last thing is the pie. That is how you're going to get into your into MicroStrategies and into our reports. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into the reports. You are not, just so everyone knows, this isn't how to use the reports, it's showing you the reports. When you come out of here, it will be available, there will be the top 10. So these are you'll mostly be using compliance, grant, global, performance, grants, compliance, finance, history, and admin, mostly everyone in this room. Oh, slide missing. Okay. Again, we're going to go over the overview of our 10 reports that we feel are the most important. Again, there are 100 on the sheets. And again, this whole idea is to reduce your burden, make life a little bit easier. You know, you can download these to an Excel format, as Gerald just said, and it makes your life, when you have to look at information, when someone says, "What have you done?" you can pull it from a report. Okay, our top 10. It's working the way it's supposed to. Okay, is our A21 report. Next one is our activity progress report, an A32. We're going to go into a little bit more details in this. C14 is our flag details. F11 is program income receipts. 12 is program income. F14 is our HUD mid thresholds. F67 is your financial summary report. Anyone here is an accountant. Hopefully you know that one. FB, okay, I got the next one wrong. P23, area benefit report. Our housing characteristics report. And last, P41 and P42, our activity performance data report. Okay, you can all go home. Is everyone ready?
And I just want to throw in real quick, the letters at the beginning of each one of the numbers for the reports matters. A is in the admin folder, C is in the compliance folder, P is in performance, F is in financial. So if you wonder where it is and you get there, just know the first letter equals the first letter of the folder that you're looking for.
A21 report, end dates and environmental status. Basically, the A21 report is everything that you've put in the beginning of your in your DRGR action plan. It has the time you started your activity, the end date of the activity, if you completed your environmental. Very important not to close out an activity and you built a roadway or built a building or something and, oh, we never did an environmental. That's kind of bad. It gives the financial metrics and the grant status. So this is an important report, just so you know where you're at. You just want to get a great overview of all your activities.
And I just want to add too, real quick, this one feeds the flag report that we're going to talk about in a little bit. So if you've ever been through a crawl with me or you're one of my grantees, you'll know this is where I get the information to identify whether or not the projected end date's already passed or is coming up, needs to be addressed. And for those of you who haven't done this before, projected end dates aren't something that you can just change, right? You have to do some research to come up with a real projected end date. Don't just throw the end of the grant as the projected end date for an activity so you don't ever have a flag again. So it takes some research. So we know that a lot of these things, if we catch them up front, it gives you plenty of time to actually address the issue and come up with a real answer, a real solution. And the other thing that we really identify out of this, as Bruce said, is the environmental status. It may just be inaccurate. And so if you haven't done it before, the environmental status is just a drop-down field. And it's really easy to forget because it's one of those set it and forget it kind of things. So, or more appropriately, you set it, then you leave, and then the next people have to deal with it. Because how many of you didn't do any of the setup and now you're having to deal with all the data that's already there and try to figure out what's old and what's new. So that's kind of, we know those headaches exist, and that's actually one of the biggest scenarios we have.
And the projected end date, just to add on to that, is, that's a good function if your activity is falling that far behind, is maybe talking with the HUD rep or the HUD rep speaking to you saying, hey, what's going on with this activity? Are we going to finish it? Or if you haven't started it and it's been 3 years, okay, maybe we need to change course. You got 3 years to do a project, and we really want you to spend these funds. Activity progress narratives. Every activity, believe it or not, even if you don't put anything in, there is a report that's generated. Again, this is a report that Congress will ask for. They'll look at activities, and let's say for a year you never spent any funds on it, but they can pull up that report and they see 4 quarters with no writing in it. It's nice to at least have something that, we're working on this, we're doing the environmental. We're not looking for book reports. We're looking for a 2-sentence, 3-sentence, the beginning, the middle, the end. Nothing that elaborate. It's just something that should be filled out. Again, these reports are open to the public, and that's why we're really giving you guys the ones that we pull and other people pull, and it's by activity type. So think about that. And again, it's done quarterly.
To just let you know, so this is a report that I really like to use whenever I talk to folks to make sure the quality of your narratives is good for each one of your QPRs. And Bruce was right. We want it to be brief. We want it to be to the point. It doesn't need to be a book. However, whenever you print this report, here's just a couple of tips. One, no VBA, no formula is required. Yay. If you sort it by activity type, if you have multiple grants, sort it by grant first. So grant, activity type, and then sort it by quarter. Then what you'll have is a nice report. So if you can highlight all the quarters of an activity, read it from top to bottom, there shouldn't be any gaps in data. It should read like a really good brief book, right? So if you read through it and it doesn't make sense, or my favorite, you read through it and every single quarter for 6 quarters has the exact same sentence. You highlight it and copy and paste. That's probably a good sign that you want to rethink what your narratives are. Believe it or not, we don't catch everything, so that one may slip by us, right? Also, if nothing happens, you don't take any action on an activity in DRGR, it doesn't show up as a place to give it, to put in your quarterly progress narrative, right? It just doesn't happen because there was no activity taken on it. You can change a drop down from no to yes and show all activities, bring it in and then add a narrative, but not many people know that exists and they don't do it, or it just slips your mind, right? Because you just want to answer what you've actually taken action on during that quarter. So if you haven't done that, it's going to be missing from the report, but the report will show blanks. Blanks don't mean that you missed something. It just means you didn't have anything to report that quarter. But sometimes think about it. If you have several quarters, like Bruce had mentioned, and you have a bunch of blanks, stop, rethink it, say, hey, you know what? We may want to bring this in. Go to your QPR, change that drop down that says show all activities from no to yes, the default's to no, and hit go, and you'll be amazed. All your activities show up. Find that activity, add a narrative, and give us an update. And that's a really good way to stay on top of it. It's also a really good thing to do because if you forget something that you did last quarter, you can come back in, look at it, and now you know exactly what you need to add to this quarter for your narrative. It's just a good tool to keep building on.
Flags. We could probably talk all day on flags. They're really there to help. They're finding things that you're missing, we're missing, and it just keeps the data running correctly, be it an end date, be it out of sync with the dollar amounts. You know, the flags are really an important tool, I want to call it. It's really an important tool. So when you see them, if you can't get through them, I'm going to tell you right now, if you have a bunch of them, and some of you do, is you can call DRGR help desk. We'll help you. I know your grantee HUD rep will definitely help you. We want to get these things down. Again, it's a flag report. Guess what? Anyone can pull these flag reports. That includes whomever's above us. So we're really trying to get these flags in the system as low as possible. I know at some point people said, it's only an end date, but it's an end date. It means that your activity went longer than you probably thought, or maybe it's completed. If you've completed something, complete it. It's less work you have to do.
And I just want to build on this. So here in my region, you know, I don't like the flag report. And I'll tell everybody, I don't like the flag report, because if you follow the other 9 reports and you stay on top of it, this report should be blank, right? So if identify your issues up front, this will be blank or very, very minimal at best. So flags really should be non-existent. So just to kind of stay on top of your other reports and just pull this to make sure you didn't miss anything. A really good way to keep a good picture of your progress. All right, program income, I'll take this one. So PI receipts, whenever you do receipt your PI, pull this report, make sure it's accurate. If you're my folks, you know, this report, almost 9 times out of 10, if you have a consolidated grant, doesn't stay in sync with DRGR. So, and which one's wrong? It's typically DRGR. That's why pulling the report is really good. So you'll be able to tell us whether or not, you know, something got, you know, stuck in the system, you know, whether it's on the reporting side or on the system side. Either way, we want to make sure it always stays right. I don't know when you receipt your PI, but if you stay in contact with your grant manager, or you can message us straight away. And he keeps saying, don't call me. I don't have a phone. I have to work through the little DRGR help at HUD.gov. So yes, message me there and we will answer you, fix it, get it fixed right away. And by right away, I mean as soon as the contractor's fixed it. So, which could be up to 2 weeks. But we have a lot of issues with these reports, but this is a great report. If you're receiving PI, pull this report the next day. I think something we may have forgotten to say, when you do something in DRGR, MicroStrategy picks it up at midnight that night and it shows on Tuesday everything that was in place on Monday. It's always 24 hours old. So just because you did it in the system today doesn't mean you can jump in there, print a report, and it'll show up right away. It's going to be 24 hours later. So just let you know, if you're doing anything with PI, you're definitely going to want to do this report. The other one is the PI summary. Please pull the PI summary. If you're receiving PI, if you're drawing PI, make sure you're pulling both of these reports on a regular basis. It is a very stressful report to pull, just because, you know, you're on pins and needles until you look at it and make sure everything's right. Got a couple of people in the room today dealing with issues that we're trying to work through on PI right now. And like I said, if you compare this to DRGR, remember, there things can happen. Reports are manually built, right? Code is manually built, right? So there's your failure point. Sometimes the person who wrote the report doesn't have in mind the same logic that maybe we thought, or maybe they missed something, and the report's got a flaw in it. So whenever a specific situation comes up, things go out of balance on the report. Same thing with DRGR. Sometimes the method's not just right. And so some activities and actions can make it get off a little bit. That's why it's a really good idea when you're dealing with the finances. And when we get to F67, I think Bruce is going to cover that. Any financial report and performance report, you're going to want to pull the reports. You're going to want to compare it to the user interface. And they're going to hear me say UI a lot. That's DRGR. Okay. And I think that's pretty much it. But again, they do get a little bit complex. So if you run into PI issues or you run into report issues or DRGR issues when it comes to PI or financials, remember, you can message the DRGR help at HUD.gov. But when you do that, please always include your grant manager on it. And if you're a grant manager, then, you know, you can message us directly through the email as well. But for the grantees, try and always include your grant manager. We want to make sure everybody stays aware of what's going on. I like the mid report. So the HUD mid threshold is not your mid threshold, right? These are the HUD most impacted and distressed areas. You have a threshold you have to hit if you have a PL 113-2 grant, right? Or newer. And that's going to be Sandy grants and newer. So if you go into DRGR and you go up to that Manage My Grants module and you click it, there's a little link button in there that says in the menu, it says View Grant. If you go and view your grant, down at the bottom, you'll have a whole bunch of thresholds listed. That's your LMI threshold, right? Your public services, planning, admin. It's also got your mid threshold there. And you're going to want to, make sure it's right, because Eagle Eye Bruce found one the other day that came back and at the LMI threshold hadn't been updated in DRGR, right? And so what I thought somebody hadn't hit a mark, they actually had, because the threshold had been modified by a waiver. So if you have waivers, double check, make sure your data is right. And the best place to do that is on the View Grant screen. Okay. So the most impacted and distressed report, I like this report because I use it in conjunction with the F67 and your threshold. If you add in a column with your grant award amount, which is easy to do, especially if you're a VBA person, you can use the macro recorder, right, to do this and save that in a notepad and then just run it every time you run your my saved report for the F14. Then it'll format and you can run through each one of your columns. By the way, if you're not that handy with the macros and you want one, if you'll message me through drgrhelp@hud.gov, I'll send you one with some directions, got pretty pictures and stuff on how to run it. And we'll work through it together to get you to a point where all you have to do is copy, paste, run, and all your analysis columns will be there for you. So anyway, the mid threshold report, you're going to want to make sure you look at it. You're going to want to make sure you go through, use the activity status columns to get it set the right way. You're going to want to take a look to make sure you're hitting the right mark, make sure everything is in the right place for you to hit that mid threshold. Okay. One of the fields on here, I don't really use it for this report for this one. I use it on the other report, but the activity expended report or column, that activity expended amount is really what we're looking at, because that's your self-reported amount, not what you've drawn. That's how much you say you've expended. And so that's what we're going to be using, that along with your award amount minus some restricted budgets and things like that. We're going to get your award amount down to a different amount. And then we use that activity expended amount to come up with our final number to make sure you hit that percentage. Because if you don't, then all kinds of bells and whistles go off, and there's that fear that your grant's going to be out of compliance at the end. So if we stay on top of it up front, it's easy. Again, it's an exciting report. I can tell. Let's see all the faces. But when you do get into it, it really is neat. If you're a data person, you're really going to like this. And when you start to mash these reports up, like the F14, the F67, the F12, the F11, things like that, you can actually pull them all together. And if you're that kind of person, you can link them by grant number, activity number, and really build out some pretty awesome reports and visuals. All right.
Financial summary report. Any financial people in here? I would hope everyone uses this report. Is that a yes? I hope. Okay. This report's really important. This lets us, by activity, what you've pulled from locks and have you spent it in that activity. It has the national objective. It includes program income if you have program income involved. Not every grant has that. And it also does the budget. This is our quickest way of assessing an activity if the funds are being spent on time. Believe it or not, we have this thing where they want funds spent at a certain spot. You guys don't worry about this. HUD does. You guys being grantees. I know as a grantee that I always say when the money was spent, we're done with the project and we have a process. There are things that we ask for that I know on the public action plan that everybody's like, I really have to give you a projection of how I'm spending money. That wasn't our idea. That came from above. So just to get an idea of where these funds are drawn from. Do you say something more?
Yeah, okay. So the F-67, if you're taking notes, a couple of helpful hints. When you pull it, if you put it in order, take your financial columns, you'll see two letters. You'll see PF and PI under some of them. Some of them you'll only see PF. If you take a look at PF and PI, that's program funds and program income combined together. That's already added for you. And of course, we know that we have some things we have to hit, like for example, our targets, all of our thresholds, they still apply to any PI that's generated that we're going to draw and expend. So if you use those 4 columns of budgeted, obligated, drawn, and expended, and you put them in that order from left to right, then create 3 new columns and do the difference between budgeted and obligated. And then do another one is the difference between obligated and drawn. And then the third one is do the difference between drawn and expended. That is going to generate a bunch of different numbers that are going to help you satisfy any flags that happen. For example, it'll show you places where you look at it and you go, wow, I've reported that I've expended more than I've drawn. We don't want that. We want to know how much of our money you've expended. So it really should never exceed what you've actually drawn, right? Sometimes it'll be a little bit lower. Sometimes it'll be a lot lower, depending on where you're at in the grant, how much you drew that quarter, and if you drew it the day before reporting. So, we know those things will be up, but it's a great litmus test of whether or not you missed something or fat fingered a, number into a report. You'd be amazed at how many times people don't realize they put numbers in and somebody else came along on the same reporting team, put the exact same numbers in, and in a quarter, you've gone and you say you've expended $2 million when you actually expended $1 million on an activity. This is an activity level report, by the way. And so it may have gone past now, the quarter's passed, you got it, you found it in your reporting, you need to fix it. Bruce mentioned this earlier, and we call those prior period corrections because you can't go back in time and make changes in DRGR. So you do them the next quarter as a prior period correction. So adjust your expenditures to make sure
a
they're
little
right.
note.
Hmm?
And make a little note.
Make a note and put it in your activity progress narrative. All right. So that way we know too. It really does help. The activity progress narrative, like I said, is really a great place to explain anything that you've adjusted, especially during the quarter. It gives us that picture. The other thing about this report is this is a big giant. It's not a huge report. It runs really fast, but it is a powerful report because it also has the national objective. It's got activity status in there. If you're looking at canceled activities that actually have finances on them, then something's wrong. You forgot to reduce the expended value down to 0, right? When you report. If you're looking at national objective, you can use this activity level report to see, hey, did we spend 51% of our funds on LMI? Does it meet the LMI national objective or whatever low mod national objective you chose, right? So you can actually go and use this report as a really quick litmus test to see that. And if you did those 3 columns I was talking about and then just use filters in a pivot table, it's a matter of, just a minute or 2 instead of, pounding your way through DRGR, especially for some of you. I've got one grantee who's got like 3,500 activities, y'all. That's an insane number. Can you imagine having to go through each one of those to make sure the reports just speed things up, make them more efficient? So, but it's a powerful report. Our financial analysts use them a lot. If you get to a point on those report and you want to know what we use it for, if you're not, somebody who's already in our regions that we work with a lot, we are more than happy to work with you through it and show you what it can do and how to set it up. Okay, cool. All right.
He's going to get to play with census data.
The P23 report, this is your area benefit census activities. P is a performance report, right? It's going to have our numbers or our accomplishments. There's a couple of things like when we release a notice or PD&R, policy development research, I think is the name of it. Do we have any PD&R people in here? But anyway, when they release these things, there'll be this really cool document. It'll say in there, hey, DRGR, if you're going to benefit a place, not just a census geographic area, do you need to do a workaround in DRGR? So if you haven't seen that, we're definitely going to talk about that here in a second. That's an interesting issue inside DRGR. We're trying to fix it. It's going to happen soon. But and by soon in DRGR years, it's soon. It's going to be in December. That's really fast. That's lightning speed. So, but this report, anything where you've chosen area benefit census is going to be in here. That's one, and there's a geography module. You go into it, you take a look, you put your activity in there, and you're going through it. You're saying, okay, this is going to benefit block groups 2, 3, and 4 of census tract 3, and you've chosen all the census tract, you've chosen all the block groups. DRGR right now doesn't allow you to choose a place, and that's a problem because some of you have activities that benefit places, right? And we all know that census geographies don't always adhere to place boundaries, right? So your town, you may have a block group that touches it and comes inside of it, but 80% of the population lives in the same block group that's outside of your city and may not benefit from the activity that you're looking at, right? So that's going to throw off your low mod numbers because it's using the entire geography. It's not using your place data. And I'm not going to go into the fix for that right now. I will say that there's a couple of notices out there. We're going to try, you can get it up on the FAQ too, to make sure that FAQ on HUD Exchange, so that you'll know how to work through that. You can also reach out to us at drgrhelp@hud.gov, and we'll send you some, just good guidance on how to work around this inside DRGR. But just know you're not going to use the geography tab or your numbers are going to be way out. That's the issue we have with it. The benefit of this is if you're not dealing with place data, if you really are dealing with a big service area activity, it's extremely easy to use. It's a bunch of drop downs, and they're cascading drop downs. I mean, welcome 1990s, but it totally works, right? Go in, start doing the drop downs. You choose whichever data set you're going to be using. If it's an old data set and you have a new activity, you can choose a new data set. They're all in there, and we have new updates coming really soon. New data sets for those of you who are new and still have activities going, in the process of being created. So everything is there that you need. The directions inside the manual are pretty clear on this one, and it's extremely helpful. And I don't think I've mentioned that enough today at all, probably. But if you haven't used the DRGR manual, use it. It's a great tool. When you log into DRGR, down at the bottom on the left on the homepage, there are a bunch of helpful links, and one of them just happens to be a link to the manual. Take a look at that. It is, pictures, can't be pictures, and hats off. I think we have Hannah Nelson, Andy, but thank you to her for making that a pretty robust tool. But anyway, this report here is pretty powerful. The reason I like to pull this up is, don't forget, you need to remove any activities that are canceled. Only focus on those activities that are underway or completed. And if you have a completed activity that uses area benefit census and it has a low mod national objective and it's below 51%, grab your grant manager pretty quick and reach out to us, and we'll all work together to figure out what our next steps are. Hopefully it's just an issue in the drop downs, chose a wrong group, block group. Yeah. And so which happens a lot. You'd be surprised at how many times that happens. So.
This is not my favorite.
I will tell you about this report. If you pull this report, one, make sure you need coffee. Don't start, when you hit go brew your coffee then, because it takes forever to run. And when it does finally come back up, it goes through like column C. Yeah, it is not tabular in a helpful way, right? So you'll have to normalize this. The only way to really get through this report is to use a pivot table. Why? Because I'm looking at household characteristics. I'm pulling person data, household data. I've got race and ethnicity data. And you can look at it 9 ways to Sunday. And if you want to know the best way to pivot this data is look at the user interface and how it's generated inside the screen on MicroStrategy. You can export it right away, but if you look at that, there are 2 row headers that are easier to read on the screen than they are in the exported report. So if you use that as a guide, that's how you can pivot. I get 3 different really helpful pivot tables out of this, so I can summarize my data fairly quickly. I don't do it manually every time because I'm going to forget. I always forget which order I put them in. So again, have that notepad ready. So you have your VBA code ready, copy, paste, run. It'll format it for you. then you can go in and look at the already formatted tables, and you'll be able to run through and identify which activities have, closed that don't have any performance measures.
Reports.
Hey, it's closed and I didn't benefit anybody. Spent money and it didn't benefit anybody. That's a big problem. You'd be amazed at how often that happens. Also, some of you closed activities way before we had validation rules in place, and validation rules that said, hey, your race and ethnicity need to match your household numbers. You want to make sure your numbers are balanced. And sometimes race and ethnicity was forgotten about. Can't forget about it anymore. It is a validation rule now, and it won't let you save anything without putting all the data in, right? So, but in the past you could. And so this report is a great way to clean that up and identify, get ready for closeout if you're one of those, or if you're in the middle of a grant and you're still not sure, you can use this report and it'll help you identify the activities where you need to make sure your race and ethnicity data is correct, your household data is correct. And as you run back through using these summaries, you can do a lot of data cleanup in a very short period of time. And especially if you're getting close to closeout, this is an extremely important report. And it's also performance report. So that means it's going to eat up 90% of your time when it comes to data cleanup.
And talking about closeout and P41 reports. Performance measures. Gerald just said that we now have a validation rule. We didn't before. So if you were lucky enough to close out a grant, you might have had a goose egg in it. The report's showing the goose egg. If you get stuck with me for either, when you get stuck at closeout, we're going to be looking at this report. We're going to go back and figure out what we really accomplished. We can't have $5 million spent and have no activity measure there. In other words, we spent $5 million. We didn't do 1,000 feet of road. We didn't help a person. This report, you should be looking at now, way before you get to closeout. This is our closeout go-to report when we first start. Because we can't have spent funds and not have any performance measures. This, again, this data is basically it has everything that you put into it. It's where you've answered, in your QPR, how many feet we did, this month, or was it that, 2 years ago? Again, even if it may be closed out and you run this report and you see a 0, we're not going to close out this report with a 0. We're not going to be able to do that. And that usually causes a lot of other issues, being very honest. Not just reopening up the DRGR action plan, it will open up the public action plan because it has a 0 in it. And most of the time, if we do this, or when you do this, you'll have your rep with you and you can show them what you're doing. It makes it a lot easier for closeout. Again, we want to close things out. We want to make sure it's correct in the system. It's really important for us to show what we've done with those activities throughout the course of the grant. So it's really important to make sure that you've got your low mod benefits correct. You've got the households correct into the system.
Okay, and you might be wondering why we said 10 reports, but there's 2 listed here. That would make it 11. So that's not lost on us. All right, P41 report. Thank you. Hats off over here to Mr. Dan from Louisiana, who's some time back, and Ryan from Texas. Both had the exact same issue. They identified the P41 doesn't always give you the right numbers because it leaves off low projections, right? And there's some other numbers. After they pointed that out, I started digging through. It leaves off some other numbers too. And I started taking a look at the logic of the report, and whoever built it, it was probably good at the time. It needs to be adjusted. So in lieu of the P41, please use the P42. It'll pull all your numbers. It'll show all your projections. And that way you can tell us whenever you have a projected 20 houses and you closed an activity with only 4 completed. We want to know why you projected more and fell short. A lot of times it's right resources, money, right? Cost of the materials, things like that. Don't forget, it's common sense to all of us because it's in our world. But somebody who's looking at your stuff and never comes time for closeout, you're going to look at your quality, your activity progress narrative. Make sure things like that, where you didn't quite hit the mark, where there's more of a 10% discrepancy between your projected and your actuals, drop that note in your QPR, activity progress narrative, for that activity. It's going to be really helpful for those who are reviewing it later on. But this report is extremely complex. Both are extremely complex. I'd like for you to know, if you're running through this report, two things. One, pivot table, don't summarize. If you do, you get some really weird numbers. And that's because back in the day, DRGR would have set up an activity, and granted, I've only been with HUD 4 years now. So I was shocked when I saw this. I brought it in. The number of measures that were generated when an activity was created would take up an entire screen. It was crazy. You don't have to use any of them. You only had to use one, but they were all generated, which means some people went through and put zeros for everything. And that prints out 32, measures in a report. So you have a bunch of zeros. We fixed a lot of that. Now you only get the actual set of measures that you really want to take a look at. You still only have to choose the one that's the primary, that you want to use, like number of households, owner occupied, renter occupied, things like that. You can actually go through single family, owner occupied, things like that. Just go through, choose the right ones for your activity type. But the data is a lot cleaner, but it's still there. And so if you have 4 housing units or 4 households and then 4 owner occupied households, that counts up as 8. So it's really only 4. You see where I'm going with that? So don't summarize on this report. Just avoid it. Generate this report, take a look at it. Don't forget, if you have canceled activities and you have, measures, you've actually got accomplishments listed, take the accomplishments out because it's a canceled activity. Don't want to throw anything off on your overall summary. Also, again, that's just data cleanup. The other thing is too, as you're running through this report, you're going to be able to do the whole thing we talked about before. Look at your low mod national objective. Make sure you have low and mod beneficiaries, accomplishments listed, okay? Because sometimes we forget and we just put our total in there and we forgot to mention the low and mod, and that's kind of integral for a low mod activity. So it's got all kinds of fields in it, tons and tons of fields. Again, get it the way you want it. Inside MicroStrategy, you're able to grab columns and drop them off of the report, drag it over, just grab it, left mouse click and drop it off. If you're a Mac user, do whatever it is Mac users do and get it off the report. You can reorganize everything and then save it, and it'll say, where do you want to save it? And the only option for you is going to be My Reports, save it there. And that way it's formatted the same way you want it every single time. This one is going to be extremely important to save into My Reports as a formatted report. And the reason for that is because of the complexity of the report. So on a data crawl, if I allot 2 hours for a data crawl, this one's at least 45 minutes for bigger grantees. If you're a small grantee, it could be up to an hour because we have a lot to dive through usually on a smaller number of activities. So
we're hoping that you guys got away that these 10 reports or 11 will help you in your daily or quarterly reports. We're hoping that they are standardized and they work well.
hey, I just want to say to you real quick, for those of you who don't know, everybody who talks to me knows I'm always asking, hey, you have an idea for a modification of one of the reports? Like, for example, a lot of our reports didn't have activity status, which to me is extremely helpful. But I don't use all the reports. Like I said, Bruce said there's 105. If you use a report that we didn't list here that doesn't have the activity status in it, and it would be helpful for you if it's not already hard-coded in as a filter on the report, which you can see, and it would be helpful, or any other field that would be helpful in a report, let us know. Send us a note, get with your grant manager. We'll figure out a way. And if it benefits everybody, we're going to build out that report. We'll modify it so we can get it to where it's useful for you. That's why those little wheels that we're turning there, that's extremely important that we all work together to build out our reporting and make it more robust. We have a pretty decent reporting tool. It's not Tableau, but it works and it gives us exactly what we need, right? So if you can help us by giving us your feedback, we can make these reports a lot stronger and more useful.
And the reports are really a great great item to open up when you work with the grantees. Again, we're trying to work as a team up here. It's not us against them. I had a really great slide, but they wouldn't let me use it. It's not us against them. We really want to help you through this. We're helping people that went through a disaster, went through trying times. So remember, we're all in this together. The reports just highlight items that may be out of sync, may be perfect. But again, it's a good talking point in case, even if you don't have a great, hopefully everyone has great relationships with their HUD representative. Or if you don't, it's just something to open it up and go, hey, we have an issue, or it's a cry for help. Everyone has that every once in a while. Let's use the reports. Let's use DRGR to its fullest. And it's not a perfect system. We both know that, but we want it, we want you guys to realize that we're here to help. And yes, you can't call me. You can use DRGR help. Any questions? Yes. No.
No, I just meant the accomplishments. If some people say, hey, we canceled the activity, but we built 10 houses. So you might want to go in and if it's canceled activity, if you didn't really build 10 houses, you want to pull those out, zero out the projections and zero out any false accomplishments.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
definitely. Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
yeah, leave
That's-
those in there.
It's a growing system. It's not, we expect things to be opened and closed. It's a 6 years program, so, and some have gone longer than that.
Okay.
We have a question about the A32 report. Can you repeat how you would sort that for the narrative?
Sure. If you have multiple grants, you're going to want to sort it by grant number. If you don't, then you're going to skip the grant number sort and you can go straight into sorting it by activity type and quarter.
Just wait for the mic. I keep forgetting. Or also live.
How's it going? James from New Jersey. We have some grants that have interchangeability and some programs that cross those grants. Are there indicators throughout these reports that will allow us to tie those activities together?
That's a great question and one I was hoping you wouldn't ask. No, we don't have any reports on interchangeability at this time, but it does sound like something we could definitely do. It's just taking the time to build out the logic for those. The data's there. You might could do what you need to do with some mashups.
Module within our internal system to be able to tie those activities together. We have to do cross references between these reports and our internal reports to accomplish that. But if it was
Right.
in DRGR, that would definitely be helpful.
Yeah, we're definitely gonna take a note on that. Thanks.
Well, with any other questions? One more.
Okay, so with the mid amount, we actually are incorporating the mid requirement into our new construction project. Is there a way to track that separately in DRGR when we do a draw?
No.
No, it's just a percentage based on your draw.
Yes.
You'll have to do that, yeah.
internally.
Unless you want to make two separate activities for the same project, which is more work.
Don't do that.
I'm not telling you, but that I've seen someone do that.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Ryan, whoa, hello. Ryan from Texas GLO. If you can go back to the 832 report.
Sure.
So like in a quarter, as we're progressing through a quarter, those activities start to fill out on the 832 for the current quarter you're in. What are all the triggers that would pull an activity into your 832 report?
There's quite a few different ones. One, any accomplishment, any type of financial information, any change to your projections, all of those are going to, narratives aren't going to trigger it.
Yeah, I was going to ask is, do you know if there's anything like you know for sure that
Oh.
doesn't trigger like an end date extension? Like maybe we said we're adding a year to this activity. Would that?
It
should-
doesn't, I tested that after we talked. Yeah, it doesn't trigger it, but there's a list that we can probably get of
Okay.
rules.
Yeah.
And that's a really good question. I'll get a list together of those rules and see if we can't get it out there on the AAQ or FAQ, I mean.
We have a virtual question.
For the QPR reviews, are there any plans to customize or create a new report to assist HUD staff in completing the DRGR QPR checklist?
There's a lot of talk about it. I know they're working on it. It's not anything I'm involved in, but it's been underway for quite some time. I answered some questions about 2 quarters back, I believe 2 or 3 quarters back. So it is something that's either being talked about or being developed. I'm just not sure of the answer right now, when it would be, or if it's still underway.
Well, I want to thank you all for your time. We really appreciate you all listening. And hopefully you gained a little bit of knowledge on our 10 reports, 11.